Numerous reports indicate that manufacturing has emerged as the favorite target of ransomware groups and hackers. In response, a new report from Industrial Media discusses the evolution of industrial cybersecurity, its current state, and the tactics hackers are using, including phishing schemes, malware, and ransomware attacks. It also details solutions in arming manufacturers with the knowledge and resources needed to win more fights on this highly complex and ultra-competitive battlefield. Download the industrial sector's new battlefield by going to manufacturing.net/cyber. Hi, I'm Jeff Ranke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. Trellix, a leading provider of cybersecurity threat detection and response solutions, recently published a report entitled Mind of the CISO. One of the more interesting findings in the report is that 31% of CISOs surveyed identified a lack of buy-in and use of cyber tools from other parts of the company as one of their leading challenges. Additionally, of those who experienced the large security incident, significant stress to the SecOps team and major attrition from these teams were identified as the most significant impacts of a cyber attack, outranking network downtime and data loss. These findings seem to indicate how important processes, not just tools, have become in defending an ever-expanding threat landscape. An increasing number of connection points and the growing use of remote access to the OT environment is juxtaposed against an increase in malware attacks and phishing schemes dependent on a lack of clear internal network visibility. This lack of clarity fuels confusion and potentially reveals only one clear route to resolving the intrusion: giving in to hackers' demands. Our guest for this episode is familiar with these dynamics and offers some interesting takes on breaking down silos and improving OT visibility. It's my pleasure to introduce Daniel Trivellato, Vice President of Product and Engineering at Forescout, a leading provider of tools and solutions focused on increasing SOC efficiency. Daniel, thanks for joining us today, and welcome to Security Breach.
Thank you for having me here, Jeff.
Absolutely. You know, in setting up the interview, one of the things that we talked about was some of these siloed approaches that still exist throughout the industrial enterprise. Kind of want to get your take there. I mean, some of these things are definitely slowing down cybersecurity efforts, or really just technological implementation throughout the whole manufacturing company. So I'd like to get your take in terms of how are we doing in terms of breaking down some of these silos, why it's so important to do so, and maybe making sure we're not just sort of cutting and pasting some of those IT approaches over to OT in the process.
Yeah, actually, you're absolutely right. They're not really technological limitations, though. Actually, technology and networks are not siloed. It's really mindset and approach from a process, procedure and solution that is creating this problem. And siloed approaches to IT and OT can't work for cybersecurity, because OT, network, and actually manufacturing, more than other sectors, consist of a variety of devices today that include OT for sure, but also IT and IoT, and they all require very different type of care and attention, to your point, right?
Yeah.
And each of these devices respond very differently to different cybersecurity measures. For example, you can't put an agent on most IoT or OT devices, right? And you cannot scan them for vulnerabilities in the same way you scan IT devices, like aggressively, continuously, all the time, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, they're basically, you're going to disrupt the production processes. Actually, when you have an EDR, antivirus, or agent on a device, but not have been able to have the same type of protection on IoT devices and OT devices, that's when you leave doors open to attackers. So most organizations are focusing on protecting, with traditional technologies, IT devices, and they're leaving the other devices behind.
Yeah.
If I may add, furthermore, nowadays, IT and OT networks are very much interconnected, right? So it's not just a variety of devices, it's even different networks in different locations which are connected with each other. This is to enable remote operation and a number of other forecasting or efficiency related use cases. We see several manufacturing customers that even have several active connections with the internet services, internet assets, internet servers. Some, they know about it and it's a choice. For others, this was an unknown, right? And this comes as a surprise when we work with them. So dealing with siloed approaches for IT and OT security, IT and OT functions would actually mean neglecting the actual and real operation of modern OT infrastructure. So the first step towards breaking these silos is actually to acknowledge this heterogeneity and hyperconnectivity. And we need to bring traditional IT security practitioners and approaches at the same table with OT engineers to ensure that the right device is secured with the most appropriate measure.
Yeah, getting everybody to work together is definitely a big part of the solution and a big part of that first step, which is difficult. And you brought up a couple of great points there in terms of the cultural dynamics. I want to circle back to that. But you also talked about some of the unique elements of these devices. On the IT side, we're thinking about printers, cameras, things of that nature. On the OT side, it's a little bit different. Maybe you could talk a little bit about not just some of those differences, but in sort of getting everyone to realize that you do need a unique approach when you're dealing with the OT environment. And what is that going to entail to sort of change people's mindsets a little bit, or things you've experienced in that genre?
Yeah. So I can make a couple of examples. So from our work with organizations, right? So many organizations nowadays want to get this stage in which they have visibility about all their devices, right? But they are understanding and they're actually very scared about how they get to this point of having visibility. So we have organizations that are more and less risk adverse, obviously. So just to make a more concrete example, some organizations are happy to allow some active scanning in their infrastructure. And from previous experience, the worst thing that can happen if you scan wrongly a printer is maybe it starts printing some weird pages with weird symbols and stuff like that. Right? Nothing wrong. But what if you basically scan wrongly sensitive data collector, sensor, or actuator from an industrial process, production line, for example. And that device suddenly stops responding to commands, to requests for information, and you basically lose any control or visibility into the industrial process itself. So at that stage, you basically preventively end up halting the production line, right? And you basically lose production. So some of the differences we're seeing organizations are taking is basically, on the one hand, choosing what techniques to use to get visibility into IT versus enterprise IoT asset as opposed to OT or IoT assets used in the OT scope. And other approaches are, on the other hand, choosing solutions that have, the way they are built is for OT devices. So it's very sensitive, very careful, and with purpose-built capabilities.
Yeah, that's a great picture that you sort of paint there in terms of understanding the differences and the impacts it can have. I think most of the people that engage with security breach on a podcast or watching on the websites, that part they get, but it's kind of understanding that message to share with others, and so we can get a greater collective buy-in to what OT security is really all about and really telling that story. With that in mind, maybe you can share some experiences that you've had in trying to get greater buy-in throughout the enterprise and cybersecurity. We're seeing more and more that the human element is so important, and that employees and workers on the plant floor, operations engineers, we all play a part in operational cybersecurity, operational technology cybersecurity. So maybe you can share again some of your thoughts or insights on how to trying to get greater buy-in throughout the enterprise.
Well, the good or bad news, I should say, is that news of successful breaches are doing the work for us in that respect, right? We are seeing that cybersecurity, luckily for OT, is starting to be even a board level conversation. I do think, however, that we still commit too many mistakes when planning for cybersecurity, meaning that we are still going back to the siloed approaches. We're still, when we think about projects, we think about, IoT visibility, separate from OT visibility, separate from IT visibility. So we are to some extent at the source of some of these problems, instead of bringing the awareness and information to our boards that it's the same problem. It's actually everything is connected. It's the same problem. And once we are able to do that, we can explain this with some of the incidents. There is evidence of incident that proves that everything is interconnected, right? Once we collate this basically approach and mindset with evidence that the attackers are actually thinking that way and exploiting that connectivity, we are basically being able to resonate better with boards and to actually align better the needs of our companies with the needs from a cybersecurity perspective.
Very good. I want to talk
actually you also asked what we can do. Another thing we have been doing with the organization, and sorry for interrupting, Jeff, we have also helped organization build a business case that shows not only, let's say, the cybersecurity value of visibility or cybersecurity for OT in general, but also the operational benefits. So how visibility solutions for OT can help organizations in identifying, malfunction, misconfigurations faster and resolving them faster to gain process efficiencies, which have nothing to do with cybersecurity. It's really just, resolving issues in the network to make it work better.
Well, and that helps just validate the ROI for all of these investments that we are now seeing in cybersecurity. It's easy to kind of push for, easier, I should say, maybe than in the past, to push forward a lot of these new technological investments. We look at automation and IoT and greater connectivity. But again, reinvesting also in the cybersecurity part, which is something for maybe previous to the last couple of years was overlooked. So it's a great point and a great tool to offer folks. Daniel, I know one of the things that Forescout is really focused on is improving visibility within the OT environment. Maybe you could talk a little bit about there. We've discussed that a lot on the show, but from your perspective, I'd really love to hear some of the things, either from a solutions perspective, maybe some of the challenges that you're seeing there in improving visibility.
Yeah. So when I think of visibility, I think of always of visibility as a starting point, right? So it's visibility is not the outcome. Visibility is an enabler. So Forescout in the past years invested both through organic development as well as inorganically via acquisitions, in order to enable a couple of things. First, to have better, more specialized visibility in every device type. Think about OT devices. I came into Forescout through the acquisition of a company called Security Matters, which was leading OT cybersecurity solution. Back in 2018, we were acquired by Forescout to bring that OT specific knowledge into Forescout and capabilities into Forescout. We bought recently a healthcare cybersecurity solution provider, because healthcare devices have similar characteristics, are very sensitive, right? Even more directly connected to human lives. So this is sort of provide better visibility into specific devices. But a second type of work we have done is to provide value that goes beyond the initial visibility. If you think about most OT solutions, they stop at telling you what devices you have, telling you what vulnerabilities you have, and telling you, maybe you have some threats. But they don't allow you to basically take action on that information. So we've invested a lot in integrating this visibility with actionability. So mitigate risks, respond to threats fully within our platform or via automation and orchestration with, for instance, CMDBs, firewalls, EDR solutions, and so on and so forth. So this allows us to accompany organization as they mature throughout their cybersecurity journey within a single vendor and platform, as opposed to them having to rely, let's say, on different vendors and deploying multiple solutions for visibility and actionability. Obviously, today we remain strongly committed to OT and industrial cybersecurity. We offer a dedicated solution for OT and industrial cybersecurity, and we keep on investing in it. But we also offer these broader platform capabilities for the next step in the customer's journey.
No, it makes a ton of sense. We look at visibility, there's really two different areas here, and I'd like to get your thoughts in terms of maybe where do you start, what is a bigger priority, where are you seeing more vulnerabilities as a result? And I think it really comes into seeing all the different data and how it's fluctuated or it may be manipulated by a bad actor. The other thing is we see in a lot of industrial systems, the hackers get in, we think we're kicking them out, but they're staying put. They're sort of those dwelling attacks. So in looking at those two different dynamics on the threat landscape, again, where would you prioritize them? What are we learning here? How are we getting better on these two fronts?
We must have visibility into these risks and your attack surface, which is broader now, in order to protect it. So otherwise, you're really doomed from the start, right? But going back to my previous comment, don't think of visibility as the end goal, as the outcome. Think of the desired outcome in terms of, risk minimization, compliance enforcement of those devices, for example, that have the EDR disabled, patching of the IT devices you can patch, or ensuring that devices that can't be patched, like OT devices, are configured securely or properly segmented. Yeah. So, it's lots of work to do, but we have ways to start.
Well, actually, and I think that's a great point. There's still, and I bring this up on some past episodes, there's a lot of blocking and tackling. The simple stuff that we can do from a cybersecurity perspective, especially in the OT environment, that's just going to make the hacker's job a lot harder. And if we can start focusing on those things and just deter them, at least make it a lot more difficult to get in to begin with, that's a win. And we can build off of that, kind of like what you alluded to there. I'd be kind of interested too. You talk about getting greater visibility as a place to start with, and all of that. By doing some of these basic things, is that also going to help in identifying when the attackers are dwelling in the system over a longer period of time? Is that going to assist in there? It's good to see all the data, but is that also going to be a potential solution for that problem?
Well, it is, because imagine if you have a good camera in every room of your house, right? Maybe the attacker is in the only, I assume you're pointing them to your crown jewels, right? To your safe, to whatever you care about. And if the attacker stays put in the corner, maybe you didn't manage to identify the attacker when he went through the door. Fine, is in the house, is in a dark corner, you're not seeing it. But if you're monitoring continuously and all the time, and you have the right threat detection and incident response processes in place, as soon as it comes close, or as soon as it does something suspicious or comes close to the crown jewels, you'll be able to spot it and react very quickly. And I tell you more, if you have a good, for instance, going back to cyber hygiene, if you make it harder to open the next door by not having default credentials or a master key in the next door, or if you have your house properly segmented, all the doors locked and the attacker can only move within certain areas, at least you reduce the blast radius. So absolutely, keep on monitoring, keep on looking, think of process efficiencies, put up threat detection and incident response processes in addition to this visibility, and you'll be able to at least react quickly. Nobody can guarantee you'll be able to spot the attacker all the time, especially when it stays put, but you'll be able to spot it when it starts doing something, and you'll be able to pinpoint all the actions and determine what's the next best response. I can make an example in this. Since it's a very interesting comparison, let's think of the Colonial Pipeline situation, for example. One of the reasons they shut down, the connection with OT and the OT operations is because they didn't know whether something had happened there. So just knowing if something has happened there allows you to do better and more informed decisions.
No, great points. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about as well, and again, setting up the interview, you talked about you're really an advocate for aligning security projects under an outcome-based strategy. That's a little bit different approach than what we've heard in the past in terms of maybe attacking certain vulnerabilities, really focusing on different areas of the attack surface. But tell me how you would define an outcome-based strategy for cybersecurity.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned some examples earlier, right? So it's about defining what good means for you in terms of network security and device security. So what is your and different companies may have different flavors in mind of what good looks like, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be different CISOs, different mindsets, and better and worse security professionals. So what this means outcome based is like, think of what your end goal should be and build your security strategy backwards. We have many companies, and I can make example of outcomes again, right? So I want, for example, to ensure that all my unmanaged devices have known default credentials and have no unnecessary open service, right? Nothing that is not used is open. So then you bring it back to visibility. You want to have visibility, or you want to have a solution that gives you visibility to this, right? But this is just one example. You need to think broader. You also want to understand how devices communicate to enforce segmentation. So you also want the solutions you pick to be able to give you this visibility for to enable segmentation and good contextual segmentation. So think about how your network at the end is going to be more secure, and then go backwards and pick the projects that allow you to get to that outcome, as opposed to starting, we see still many companies starting IoT visibility projects, OT visibility projects, and after they get visibility, they question what they can do with the data. How do they put that in action? So reverse the process. Think of what the action and the outcome should be, and then build the solution backwards.
So I think that makes a ton of sense when you're really starting from the beginning. Maybe you could offer some advice. We've got a lot of people in our audience, and I hear from these folks talking about, I'm a mid to larger sized enterprise. Our outcome, to borrow your term, has changed dramatically over the last 18 months, 24 months because of the uptick in attacks, expanding attack surface, more investment in automation and Industry 4.0 tech. How do I sort of adjust that outcome then? Where do you start? Because it's different now. The outcome that you may be desiring is just, I want to prevent against an attack here. I want to make sure we don't get hit with ransomware, whatever the case is. Could you offer some perspective there in terms of how do you adjust that outcome and work backwards again within a mature enterprise?
Yeah, well, it's normal that you'll need to adjust over time, right? Cybersecurity, like the threat landscape, is a moving target, is always an evolving situation and evolving context, right? So what you want to have is always this continuous improvement plus process in place, and this continuous measurement in place to enable you to understand what where you stand with respect to the desired security posture you want your organization to have. But obviously technologies evolve, and attacks evolve as we just mentioned. So for example, EDR solutions didn't exist 25 years ago, right? or not in the shape they're now. OT cybersecurity didn't exist in 15 years ago, before Stuxnet came in to some extent, right? So new outcomes may come in, at which point you may want to reevaluate, you want to measure, you want to, again, decide what new outcome you want to have, and reevaluate whether what you already have in place can be just tuned towards that outcome, or if you need to rethink your strategy and your solutions. We like going back to the example of companies starting with visibility and then trying to figure out what they want to do. They sometimes have to track back on their initial decision and change their strategy, rip something out in order to basically bring something that fits better their strategy in. So that will happen. That's inevitable, and that's going to continue to happen. The important thing is that you have this continuous evaluation and measurement process in place.
Excellent. No, great advice. Daniel, we've talked a lot about different things that you've been involved with. Is there anything else about Forescout that you might want to fill us in on in terms of what the company is up to, or some of the services that it offers?
So I mentioned something earlier on, but we have been very busy with a number of things. So I mentioned also that I came into Forescout from the acquisition of Security Matters. Security Matters was really just specializing on OT cybersecurity, but what we now offer to our customers is a broader platform that, on the one hand, combines this ability to see and understand OT devices, but also the IT devices surrounding or actually connected to and surrounding these OT devices and OT networks, as well as the IoT devices that are constantly introduced in OT networks. So we have expanded in that direction in order to provide our customers with a single solution for every device type. We are very conscious of the fact that cybersecurity is a team sport, right? And that different solutions, different vendors do their job best. So for instance, we don't think we'll provide an EDR to our customers, but what we did is we built engines and automation that allows us to exchange data with EDRs so that we can make our job in a more informed way of providing risk metrics or providing visibility into OT networks, and they can do their job better by understanding the context around where these IT devices that they monitor are located. Same thing with firewalls, for example. Firewalls monitor network perimeter. Our solution can monitor inside a network, but at the same time, when we see adversaries doing weird things from outside to inside the network, we can collaborate with a firewall to basically say, new evolving threat, please block for now this source until we tell you better. So we have expanded our platform to collaborate and work better in automation with security players in order to also compensate for the skill and personnel shortage that there is around in cybersecurity, right? As well as expanded our solution from a threat detection and incident response perspective with an acquisition we made last year.
A lot of those things are really focused on efficiency in the SOC, which is obviously right down the alley for manufacturers in the industrial sector. So it makes a lot of sense. Seems like a great fit. I got to wonder, in all the things that you're developing, and you said a lot of it was through merger and acquisition and things like that, bringing these technologies together, these approaches together. Were there any particular vulnerabilities, types of attacks, maybe even attacker groups that are sort of at the forefront, or things that are in your mind when you're developing some of these strategies and tools?
Yeah, it's actually we don't have the luxury of picking what attacker we should help organizations with.
Yeah.
We want to protect them from all attackers and all types of attacks. So because of that, we have formed a very strong research team into threats, vulnerabilities, APTs, how attackers evolve, and they keep on monitoring both APTs like nation states as well as hacktivists. All the type of threat actors, script kiddies, all the type of threat actors, by looking, for example, at what activities they do through other analysts, the security analyst firms, as well as how through our own, for instance, sandbox environment and testing environments that we open up to basically stimulate attacks and understand how attackers would move in an OT environment. And basically we leverage this intelligence in addition to the traditional IOC and paid feeds and sources to basically provide this comprehensive and always evolving protection to our customers for any type of adversity.
So just want to throw some topics at you right now that are a big deal in cybersecurity. I'm sure these won't be unfamiliar to you. One of the big ones is we've got this huge lack of cybersecurity specialists, especially on the OT side. And it puts manufacturers in this difficult position of, do I try to recruit and get somebody in the door that does have this information? Do I try to train somebody internally? Do I try to bring somebody over from IT into OT? What have you seen maybe work the best, or what are your thoughts on some of this gap in individuals we have with this OT security expertise?
Yeah. Well, headlines about cybersecurity workforce shortage are nothing new, right? According to some sources, between 2013 and 20, so in the last 10 years, the number of positions being seeked in this space increased of 4x. So there is no doubt there is shortage. And in the case of industrial cybersecurity, the problem is even worse. And finding workers is even harder, because what you want is a strong cybersecurity knowledge, but combined with in-depth understanding of OT systems, OT networks, and OT protocols, right? So you're basically looking for unicorns. And there are three ways actually OT organizations can compensate for this shortage. One is actually forming cross-functional teams that include both IT security and OT personnel, so that the knowledge that you can't find in a single person is obtained by a constant communication and joint decision making. So we are seeing something you said. We are seeing more and more organizations training their OT experts in cybersecurity to grow internally the expertise they can find on the job market. And we are seeing actually companies having more success in growing OT personnel into cybersecurity than vice versa at the moment. And the second and third that I can combine, increased reliance on technology to automate more and more actions. security automation is becoming a must, right? There are too many devices, too many device types, too many threat actors, too much data that security solutions generate, and analysts or security personnel will have to sift through, right? So technology and automation become a must to reduce this noise to only what matters, and to automate to whatever extent possible information sharing across all security tools, and automate and orchestrate workflows across those tools to basically accelerate mitigation and response action, such as, for example, applying controls and enforcing compliance. Going back to the EDR example before, if you see that the EDR is disabled, automatically enabled, because that's not what you want from an EDR. So that leaves security teams with time to focus on what truly requires human intervention, such as new unknown problems or critical security decision. When you have that, the decision is I either block this attacker and hold production, or I let it go and see what happens, but I know I have an adversary in my network. So there are some very difficult decisions for which automation is probably not viable.
Well, when you talk about automation in security, the natural connection there, everybody's going to go, were you talking about artificial intelligence? Is that the next step? Is that what we're looking at?
Also, yeah. So there is malicious actor. Everybody's a bit looking at the impact of AI, right? And then the impact that AI could have on cybersecurity. So malicious actors are doing it. Academic researchers are doing it. Industry researchers are doing it. We are all trying to understand how AI will affect basically cybersecurity in many ways. But the impact of AI will likely be massive, that's for sure, for both defenders and attackers, however, since it will accelerate the generation of artifacts and processes for both actors. In terms of attacks leveraging AI, so far what we are observing is mostly cases of AI-generated phishing campaigns. So attackers are leveraging generative AI to generate credible emails to basically target victims in a more credible way, and they're being successful. And just like last week, also somebody was advertising on the dark web WormGPT software or worm generator, which is a large language model without the safeguards, however, of ChatGPT. So there is some article. If you look up for WormGPT, you'll be able to find it easily online. And Forescout is also obviously experimenting with AI. Our threat research team worked on and published two blog posts showing how attackers could leverage AI today or in the future. So how these AI-based threats could evolve. And from a defender's perspective, I'm actually very excited that in about 2 weeks from now, or exactly 2 weeks from now, actually, we will run a hackathon in the Forescout Eindhoven office, which is going to be targeted exactly on how we could leverage generative AI in different parts of our software or of our business. So hopefully more to come on this.
I got to ask you, you talked about some of the different things that are going on in the phishing. We've seen these phishing schemes really ramp up in the industrial sector. It's leading to now an uptick again in ransomware attacks, unfortunately. Got to ask you, when it comes to ransomware attacks, the biggest question is, do you pay? Do you hold out? What's kind of the advice or your perspective on that? I know it's a hot seat question, but thought I'll throw it out there and see what you got.
Cannot answer because it's always there are so many factors that play into this. It's like what data for what purpose, who is the attacker, it's a very difficult question, and I think I'm luckily not in the spot at the moment to having to make this decision.
No worries. I do want to plug, Daniel, you mentioned the paper that you guys put out, the most vulnerable connected devices in 2023. I did get a chance to look at it. It's fantastic. We'll put a link to that in the notes for the episode. Highly encourage everybody to take a look at that and download it. Daniel, before we sign off here, any other trends, anything you see kind of coming down the pike in the cybersecurity realm that we should be aware of?
In terms of trends, I can mention 3 trends we are either seeing or starting to monitor. The first one is we're starting some projects. At the moment, it's non-production projects, but interesting research and development projects with some partners and prospects and customers on 5G. they're starting to adopt and make use of or plan to make use of 5G in some of their core services, and we are trying to work with them on how basically this impacts security for them, right? The second trend I'm seeing is that there was a couple of years ago the boom of keyword visibility, right? And now there is a bit of the keyword would be what next, right? So there is two areas in which we are seeing organization going. Is the first one is what do I do after I get visibility, right? So the organizations that basically chose OT cybersecurity solutions that are just providing the visibility are now coming back and say, maybe I need something bigger, broader, that not only gives me this visibility, but also allows me to take action. And the second is, what do I do with the myriad of information that these solutions, any cybersecurity solution generates, right? It's too much. Like even for my SIM, it's too much, right? So that's why, the investments we made as Forescout that I mentioned earlier, that the ability to take action based on what you see, and this, XDR-like correlation engine that basically feeds back to the SIM to reduce the noise are something that we're getting a high request for. And the third one is to some extent linked to the second. Organizations are starting to have too many security solutions, so they're starting to rationalize and think how they can consolidate this vendor. So can I get a single vendor that does more, for example? Can I get, instead of an IoT security, OT security, and IT security or IT visibility solution, can I get a single one that does all of them, right? Can I use this solution also to automate some of my workflows? So it's a lot about efficiency, dealing with this broader, more interconnected world, as well as to the efficiencies that the shortage and sheer amount of data we are dealing with today generates, basically.
Daniel, thanks so much for joining us today. And to learn more about Forescout, you can check them out at forescout.com. Thank you for joining us today. And to catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or mbtmag.com. You can also check Security Breach out wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Overcast. And if you have a cybersecurity story or topic that you'd like to have us explore on Security Breach, you can reach me at jeff@ien.com. For Daniel Trivellato, I'm Jeff Ranke, and this is Security Breach.